How does the son of a fisherman and little-known tennis pro become the most powerful man in football? Not a player, not a coach, not even a footballer. And yet, he runs one of the most valuable clubs in Europe, controls the broadcasters who pay for the biggest matches, calls the shots at UEFA, and even shows up in high-level government talks with the French president. Right now, he's locked in a legal battle with one of football's biggest stars. This is the story of Nasser Al-Khelaifi and how he became football's ultimate power broker. Welcome to Athletic Interest. Men who wield as much power as Al-Khelaifi usually come from a blue-blooded background. But his start in life was far more modest. Born in Doha in the early 70s, Al-Khelaifi's family was supported by his dad's job of pearl fishing. Now that might sound luxurious. Pearls, jewelry, boats. But back then it was anything but glamorous. Before Qatar struck oil and gas, pearl diving was one of the country's few industries. Dangerous work, long days, low pay. So no, Al-Khelaifi didn't grow up around luxury. But he did grow up around ambition. He picked up a tennis racket early, and by Qatari standards, he stood out. By 1992, he was playing professionally. Not on center court though. His highest ATP ranking, 995. Total career prize money, around 14,000 euros. But that didn't matter, because his biggest win didn't come on the court. It came in who he played with. One of his regular hitting partners was a young tennis fan named Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, who would later become the Emir of Qatar. They played doubles together, trained together, and eventually worked together. In 2008, with Tamim rising through Qatar's power structure, Al-Khelaifi was appointed president of the Qatar Tennis Federation. It was his first step into sports administration. Then came Al Jazeera Sports. He was brought in to buy broadcasting rights. First for tennis, then football, then everything else. And when Qatar launched its own sovereign wealth fund for sport, Qatar Sports Investments, or QSI, guess who was put in charge in 2011? Same year, QSI bought a majority stake in Paris Saint-Germain. And just like that, Al-Khelaifi became president of a major European football club. And the trust in him kept growing. In 2013, he was named Minister without Portfolio in the Qatari government, which basically means he doesn't run a ministry, he just has access everywhere. From a tennis court in Doha to the presidential suite at Parc des Princes. But as impressive as all of this sounds, does that make him the most powerful man in football? Who owns the power in football anyway? To understand, we'll zoom out and draw a little power map. There are a few main players in the power game, and they are all tightly connected. First, clubs. The ones with the players, the stadiums, the fans, the history. They create the product. They are the emotional core of the game. Second, leagues and federations. They organize the competitions, set the rules, hand out the punishments. This includes national leagues like the Premier League or La Liga, and also the big ones like UEFA and FIFA, who run the Champions League and World Cup. Third, broadcasters. These are the companies that pay billions for the rights to show the games. And in return, they dictate kickoff times, schedules, and increasingly, the shape of the product itself. Fourth, sponsors. From shirt deals to stadium naming rights to official blockchain partners, sponsors inject money, shape brand strategy, and influence visibility. That's the basic structure. There are a few more stakeholders involved, but we'll come to that later. Now you probably already get the twist. Nasser Al-Khelaifi is connected to all four. But let's look at it in more detail and zoom in on the first node of the network. QSI took over PSG for around 70 million euros from an American firm. A decent deal for a top-flight team in a European capital. But let's be honest, this was no Real Madrid. Back then, PSG was more soap opera than super club. Empty seats, no long-term vision. There were moments of success, but Paris was never really a football city. Al-Khelaifi had a different idea. From the start, he and QSI made the plan crystal clear. Turn PSG into a global brand. Within 5 years, be one of Europe's best, win the Champions League, build a club worth 1 billion euro. Paris, they believed, was the key. A beautiful city, the capital of France, already known around the world, and 13 million potential fans living in and around it. But without a football club already dominating. A sleeping beauty, ready to be woken up. So they went shopping. PSG broke the French transfer record in year 1 with Javier Pastore. Then came Thiago Silva, Zlatan, Neymar, Mbappé, Messi. It was like flipping through a Ballon d'Or shortlist. This was the Hollywood era, where star power was the strategy. The mission was to win trophies, but also to announce that PSG had arrived. It led to domestic dominance, but in Europe, the one prize they truly wanted, the Champions League, stayed out of reach. Every season, a new heartbreak. Still, off the pitch, things were working. Parc des Princes became a meeting point for the world's biggest celebrities, because Al-Khelaifi and his team had built a brand. The logo was simplified, Paris made more prominent, the kits got sleeker, the partnerships got bolder. Suddenly PSG was not only in football blogs, it was showing up in Fashion Week recaps. Al-Khelaifi said spectators should be treated like guests at a 5-star hotel. And the club was reimagined as a luxury product. Still without a Champions League title though, but plenty of drama instead. Then came 2024, and the end of an era. Kylian Mbappé left. And suddenly, PSG looked different, quieter, younger, more about the team than the individual. Al-Khelaifi called it a cultural reset. And weirdly, it worked. PSG started winning again. Not just Ligue 1 matches, but Champions League games that actually mattered. It's taken over a decade, but from the outside, it looks like PSG has finally made the jump. From a vanity project to a real football club, at least from a business perspective. Acting like a club with a plan, not just a wallet. And that's just one part of the web. Next, we zoom in on where the real money comes from. If PSG was the public project, the brand that everyone could see, then beIN Sports was the quiet power move. Broadcasting rights are still the largest revenue stream in football, because owning the rights to broadcast football means owning a lot of attention. Under Al-Khelaifi's leadership, beIN Sports, formerly Al Jazeera Sports, quickly became one of the most important sports broadcasters in the world. They acquired rights to La Liga, Serie A, Ligue 1, the Bundesliga, and most importantly, the Champions League. Not just for the Middle East, but all around the world. So in many markets, if you wanted to watch the best football in the world, you didn't go to Sky or ESPN. You went to beIN. And that wasn't by accident. Qatar understood early on that media rights were the most valuable asset in football. They didn't just want a club, they also wanted the pipeline. And Al-Khelaifi was the one building it. While clubs argued with leagues, and leagues negotiated with federations, beIN sat at the table with a simple offer. We'll pay. And in return, we'll shape how football is packaged, scheduled, and distributed. It was about long-term influence. And it worked. beIN became a political and economic force. So much, so that when Saudi Arabia launched a state-backed piracy operation, essentially stealing beIN's signal and rebroadcasting it for free, the conflict nearly derailed diplomatic relations in the region. The channel was no longer just a broadcaster. It was a national asset. And Nasser Al-Khelaifi, once again, was right in the middle. Clubs play the games. Broadcasters pay to show them. But it's the sponsors that make the machine run. Speaking of sponsors, for Nasser Al-Khelaifi, managing PSG means managing everything. Contracts, marketing, merchandise, logistics, broadcast deals. If you want to run a modern business, whether it's a global football brand or a creative startup, staying organized is key. And that's where today's video sponsor Odoo comes in. Odoo is an all-in-one business management software. It brings together over 45 powerful tools, including project management, accounting, CRM, HR, e-commerce, inventory, and more, all in one platform. Everything you need is in one place. For example, selling merch on the e-commerce app, for which invoices would automatically be issued with the invoicing app, which, when paid, would be automatically encoded in the accounting app. Less time spent on admin and more time spent on improving the club or your business. It's flexible, scalable, and surprisingly affordable. The first app is free for life, and you can unlock the full suite starting at just €19.90 per month. No Qatar money needed. It's trusted by over 12 million users around the world and built for businesses of all sizes. So if you want to run your business like a Champions League club, check out Odoo at odoo.com/r/athletic-interest or the link in the description. Thanks a lot for supporting us. And now back from our sponsor to PSG's sponsors. In 2024, PSG pulled in 415 million in sponsorship revenue. That's not just the highest in Ligue 1, it's the highest of any team across Europe's Big Five leagues. To put it in perspective, PSG's sponsorship income alone was worth more than half of all Ligue 1 clubs combined. So how is that possible? Well, it helps when many of your biggest sponsors are linked to your owner. Since QSI took over the club in 2011, PSG's sponsor list has been filled with names you tend to see in the same orbit. Qatar Airways, Qatar Tourism, Qatar National Bank. And the deals are massive. Inside the club, it was described as nation branding through football. Or as Zlatan once put it, today we represent Paris, France and Qatar. But it goes beyond PSG. Qatar Airways also sponsors FC Barcelona. Qatar National Bank has backed the Asian Football Confederation. Ooredoo is involved with clubs across the Middle East. In the case of PSG, it created a financial ecosystem that most clubs can't compete with. And Al-Khelaifi sits at the center of it. Some of the deals came under scrutiny for potentially violating financial fair play rules, because many of the sponsors are related parties, meaning they're influenced by or connected to the club's owners. But for now, the money keeps flowing, because Al-Khelaifi knows how to navigate football politics as well. In 2021, he became chairman of the European Club Association, the body that represents over 200 clubs across Europe. He replaced Juventus president Andrea Agnelli right after the Super League collapsed. That wasn't a coincidence. When 12 elite clubs tried to break away and form their own competition, PSG didn't join. Al-Khelaifi stayed loyal to UEFA, and in return, he was rewarded with more influence. He already had a seat on UEFA's executive committee. Now he became one of President Severin's closest allies. Even when Al-Khelaifi faced corruption allegations, Severin stood by him and insisted he stayed on the board. And by now, that influence goes far beyond the game. You might remember Gianni Infantino hanging out with Trump. Well, Al-Khelaifi hangs out with powerful people as well. In late 2023, he was seen at the Élysée Palace, alongside French President Emmanuel Macron and Qatari officials, reportedly participating in diplomatic talks about a ceasefire in Gaza. He runs a club, buys the media rights, controls the companies writing the checks, and the organizations making the rules. And yet, with all that power, Al-Khelaifi is still being challenged, because in our web, there is one very important node missing. The players, who now build their own brands, move markets with a tweet, and have global audiences that sometimes rival the clubs they play for. And if there's one player who embodies that power, it's Kylian Mbappé. The relationship between Mbappé and Al-Khelaifi was once the foundation of PSG's strategy. He was the star who turned down Real Madrid. But in 2024, it all fell apart, and Mbappé eventually left Paris. And now he's trying to claim 55 million euros in unpaid wages and bonuses. His lawyers didn't just go to the league or to UEFA. They filed complaints in civil and criminal courts. They even asked a court to partially freeze PSG's bank accounts and requested that PSG be banned from the Champions League. The club, of course, denies the claims, saying there was a verbal agreement that Mbappé would forego that money in order to leave for free. And now the fight is public. Arguably the most powerful executive in football versus arguably the best player in the world. And it's not just about money. Mbappé's team has framed it as bigger issue, a stand for player rights and transparency in football contracts. The outcome is still unclear, but the message is obvious. Players are no longer just employees. They are power brokers too. And with that, the map is almost complete. But there's one more note we haven't talked about. The fans. They don't sit on committees. They don't sign deals. They have no legal ownership. But they have something none of the others do. Cultural ownership. If they stop watching, there's no money to negotiate, no influence to wield, no trophies that matter. So yes, Nasser Al-Khelaifi may be the most powerful man in football right now, sitting in the center of the web. But we are the ones that keep it spinning.